Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the R&B Turbine Art Fair Walkabout, which will be conducted by me, Pfunzo Sidogi. We're just going to wait a few moments to allow others to join us online before we formally begin. So I'm just going to pause for 30 seconds, quite literally, just to wait for a few others to join us. Then we will formally begin. So once again, welcome to everyone who's joining us for this RMB Turbine Art Fair Walkabout. My name is Pfunzo Sidogi, and I am a lecturer at the Tshwane University of Technology, the Faculty of Arts and Design, and I'm really happy to be with you guys. Just to give you a virtual walkthrough of this year's RMB Turbine Art Fair. The opening festivities began yesterday, and there's a fantastic video on YouTube that you can access, which just summarizes what the art fair is all about, what the Turbine Art Fair is all about. So I would encourage all of you to go check it out if you've not seen it already. And so for the next hour or so, what I will do is I will just give you a run through of the exhibitions and projects which I find to be interesting. I must issue a disclaimer that this is a highly subjective talk, and also please forgive the background noise. I'm doing this talk from home, so if that disturbs you, please forgive us. There's a little bit of renovations that are taking place here. So I just wanted to get back to the point that this is a very subjective talk that I am giving you guys. And so I would encourage all of you in your own leisure, in your own time, to really spend some quality time going through the exhibitions, because there's some fantastic work that has been put up by the almost 60 exhibitors that are part of this year's fair. Just some housekeeping as well is you guys are welcome to post questions on the comment section, and I will try my best to go through those as and when the talk progresses. So please, if you have any comments or any questions, I will definitely look into those. So the first part that I would like to talk about are just the diversity of the exhibitors. If you go to the exhibitors and the galleries page, you'll actually see that there is an amazing assortment of galleries that are part of this year's Turbine Art Fair. And as Carol Nell mentioned at yesterday's opening, it's a very healthy mix of established galleries, some of the old guard, and some really new, interesting, exciting spaces which are showcasing contemporary South African art. So I think that's always a healthy mix and a healthy dynamic to have within art fairs of this nature. So that's one thing I would really like to commend the organizers of achieving. However, I would like to give a special shout out to the White River Gallery from Mpumalanga, and I think that's quite cool, because what you have there is you are getting uh, uh, an expansion or a different footprint of art appreciation in the country. Of course, we know that there'll always be galleries from Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Durban, but I think it's quite fantastic that we're also having spaces from the provinces like Mpumalanga being represented at these marquee art fairs like the Turbine. So that is awesome, and we also have some spaces from beyond the country. We have Start Art Gallery from Windhoek, Namibia as well, which you can have a look at, and later on I'll talk a little bit about one or two artists there, which I found to be making some awesome work. So that's quite cool. So I just thought, without being biased or anything, I thought that it was quite good to find these galleries that are expanding the geography of art appreciation. So well done to both the galleries and the R&B Art Fair for bringing these exhibitions and these artists online, and I think that's an important concept that we should perhaps dwell on, the whole notion that here we are having this online walkabout, and of course we know this has been brought about by the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, that we're appreciating art in totally different ways than before. So I think this is really amazing that so many of these artists have been brought onto the online space and the online platform, because many of the artists that you will look at and their work and the works that have been represented here would actually never get an online presence. So I think this is a really an amazing first step in kind of expanding, once again, expanding the scope of art appreciation. However, with that said, we should also acknowledge that while there are all of these exhibitions and projects and artists that are online, there are many of those that remain offline, and are making just as amazing and interesting work as the ones that are online, and we find this all around us, right? In our city streets, the graffiti on the walls, how people adorn or embellish certain designs on their gates of their homes, or on their fences. I mean, that is constitutive of creativity that sometimes never makes it onto the online platform, and so it's really important for us to also continue to acknowledge and appraise and appreciate that type of creativity as well. And so that intersection between the online and the offline is quite critical as we are celebrating the online right now. And I think this is the new world, the brave new world that we're moving into. We should not forget the offline as well. So another point before we actually go to some of the exhibitions that I would like us to look at is to always be mindful that what we are seeing here is not constitutive of all the creativity that exists in the country. It is just a selection. There's a lot of rigor that goes into determining which artists eventually make it onto fairs like this. So that's always really important to remember, that in as much as there are all of these artists who have been put into the fair, there are many more who are also outside of the fair, and as I say, this then does not really represent the whole of creativity in the country. It is just a selection of what we consider to be the best, and so one must always be mindful of that. Now, the other point, which is important to remember, is hopefully some of you guys who are able to, you will be able to purchase some of these works, and this is one of the things which is big for the Turbine Art Fair, is to introduce emerging artists and so that they become collectible. So hopefully you guys will be inspired to purchase some works as well. The first space that I would like us to go into, or the first exhibition that I'd like us to have a look at, is actually one of our special projects, or one of the special projects in the Turbine Art Fair, this year's Turbine Art Fair, and that is the Tactile Visions, the Woven, which has been curated by Charlene Khan. And there as well, what I love about this exhibition is there's an amazing mix of your really established, internationally renowned artists, alongside some artists that would actually never make it into the gallery space. what is common amongst all of these artists is how they use weaving or those kind of skills, craft skills, in order to create their works. So as we see, for example, in these works by Piliswalela, she uses beads to create her works. And of course, we know that within kind of African cultures, beads are quite central, or bead making is quite central as a form of creativity, but also as a form of creating items that are donned for certain occasions or certain performances or certain rites of passage. So Piliso's work is kind of building on this tradition that is already pre-existing within many Southern African cultures, and certainly many cultures around the world. So certainly her work is quite exciting in terms of the beads. So she's one to look out, and she's of course an award-winning artist, having received the Gerard Sikoto Award from the APSA Atelier. But as I said, what I love about this specific exhibition is you have artists like Piliswalela, but if you go down further, you'll also find other established artists like your Merisi Bandes as well, who is part of this show. Reshma Shiba as well. There are some works by Reshma Shiba, and really exciting new work that they are bringing out. But what I would like to focus on specifically as we scroll through, Kumbuza Makadula, of course, his performances again using lace, really exciting. But as we scroll down, there's a whole group of artists, as I said, who usually don't make it into art fairs, but are here, and I found that to be quite exciting. So there's Reshma Shiba. We can go down further. Scroll down. Okay, Linda Lamasuku as well. That's quite. There we go. I think if we can just take it back up to these artists, these groups of artists. Yes, maybe we can stop there at Umam Nomtandazo Sweni. So I think what the curator has done quite successfully here, Shalin Khan, is to bring into the fore of kind of serious art, as we would call it, or high art. These creatives who work within a kind of community setting, who work mostly within a rural setting, and who are using these skills that have been kind of passed down from generation to generation of bead making. And I found that to be fascinating, how oftentimes we neglect these forms of creativity as kind of being craft, or not being seen as part of the fine arts. But I think the inclusion here is quite fascinating, and also the fact that the curator has been quite cunning in the way that she has acknowledged the artists. So to say Mam Nomtandazo, because that's how obviously she would be called in her social setting. To kind of retain the identity that she already has, or the standing that she already has, I think is quite interesting, and I really commend the curator on that. So as you can see, there are several of these artists who have been part of previously have been part of cooperative projects, and we've got many of those examples like Ardmore and Mapula in Winterfeld, where these artists are part of a larger cooperative. But I think here acknowledging them as kind of individual creatives is an important first step in bringing them into the realm of high art. So as I said, I found that to be quite cool. So we can move on from here. So again, as I said, I'm just giving you highlights on what these artists have created. The next one that we could look at is the Start Art, the Namibia project, because that is also quite fascinating. The kind of projects that they have, the artists that they are represented. So if we could just go to that. There we go, the Start Art. Um, and as it is loading, I think one of the most important aspects around art appreciation and actually uh, buying art is to always remember that this is a highly personal decision. Whatever you decide to purchase, whatever you decide to to put in your home. In fact, I'm going to put a phrase that is commonly used, that in art, when you buy art, it must give you some kind of aesthetic masturbation. That is, it must give you pleasure, but obviously of an aesthetic sense. That any artwork that you look at really needs to please you. So that is really really important. So again, as we look at some of these works that have been produced by the Namibia-based artists. The kind of aesthetic that is coming out of there is really really global, and I think that is an important point to always remember how interconnected we are, even with Philippa's sh- uh, sh- uh, Shihama. That's right. Yeah, Philippa Shihama. We can see his work, or her work, or this artist's work has been inspired by the Ghanaian-born Nigerian artist Al Anatui, who also uses discarded material to create this kind of massive blankets, or this kind of paintings that have been created by the everyday found object. So again, you can see that kind of transnational influence that is happening here, with artists who are based in Windhoek, being able to tap into kind of the global creative cosmos, and so whilst we are here in South Africa or Gauteng or Johannesburg, kind of the center of the art world in Africa, we must always remember that the artists in the other lesser renowned countries in terms of their kind of high art production are also keyed into what is taking place around the world. So that's what I found to be quite fascinating. Um, Again, if we move on to the other artists within this show, that is palpable, I'll just scroll down, or allow it to be scrolled down. And again, you just get a sense of what the artists from Namibia are producing. So I found that to be really really cool. The next show that we can have a look at is the First Look, the graduate exhibition. And of course, I have a particular interest on this because of my vocation as a teacher within a university. But I think this is always gives one a pulse of where art is going. Or the artistic direction of our country, because obviously the graduates that are coming out of these exhibitions will go on to be the important artists of tomorrow. So there are various universities that are represented under the First Look, the graduate exhibition. I think the University of Pretoria. You also have work from Stellenbosch there, so it's kind of a broad reach from around the country. And what for me is always fascinating with these kind of shows is the focus on subjectivity, the subjectivity of the artists. What you will quickly notice is if you go to all of the various institutions that are represented here, is there are really there's a deep questioning from all of the artists around their positionality. I don't want to use the word identity as much, because that is always a problematic term, but certainly in terms of their place in the world. And if I can paraphrase Peter Binsbergen, who's at the Nelson Mandela University, there is this intersection between my place in the world as kind of an individual. So the artists are looking at my place in the world, but also the world within me, and I think that's quite fascinating. So there's always this shift where artists are looking at themselves and what is the world that exists within themselves. And again, you can see that with these two works that have just passed now, by Michaela, with the cell phones. I think that is quite fascinating, looking at the evolution of the cell phones. If you can just scroll slightly up, there we go. Her work, which is obviously a self-portrait, again looking at herself, but also looking at herself as a kind of digital being. And so this kind of evolution of cell phones, maybe some of you, depending on how old you are, you'll be able to recognize maybe your first cell phone, or when you got your cell phone. I can see mine there, some of the Nokias from the early 2000s and so on. But again, I think that interrogation of us as digital beings is quite important. And even if we go to the next one by Octavia Roth, the kind of graphic image, that's right. Again, you can see this is inspired by artists like Anton Kamenemeyer, who made similar work previously in their bitter comics type of engagement. But what comes through again so clearly is this looks like a really deeply personal work, where the artist is really interrogating aspects of their own personality and positionality in the world. What does it mean to be a young person living in South Africa during this time? So what I will do for now, before I continue, is I'll just have a look at some of the questions around the chat, and thank you for all your contributions, talking about the whole online engagement not being the same as the tactile, and I certainly agree with that. It's not the same. Seeing a work digitally and seeing it live is totally different. And I think it goes back to the point that I talked about earlier. The intersection between the online and the offline is really important. And there's also questions around the pricing, and I think it's really important that if there's a work that you are interested in and it does not have a price, you can contact the organizers, or you can contact the gallery directly, and I think they will definitely assist you to get the prices of those works. Okay, so that's always one to look out for, the graduate show, the first look, and again, I think this is something that the Turbine Art Fair needs to be commended for, that they give this a space and a platform for emerging artists to showcase their works. And we know that our universities, there's about 17 art departments in the country that offer art. Obviously, not all of them have been represented here. There's always a process of selection, but these art departments really do a lot of sterling work in advancing our creative economy by training these new artists. Now, the next one that we can shift towards, which I also quite liked, are the collectives, and there's quite a number of collectives that have been represented in this show, but the one that I would like us to look at is the Free State Art Collective. And again, my interest in looking at the Free State Art Collective is to look at these spaces of creativity that are happening outside the so-called center, so outside of kind of Gauteng, outside of kind of the Western Cape. So again, this is not to say that all the other collectives and the other project spaces that are there are not important, or certainly they are, but I think we need to shed an even greater spotlight to these ones that are just coming out of the periphery. And of course, Free State and kind of Bloemfontein has a really rich heritage and an important history with regards to art making within our country. So again, I think this is worth looking at, and there's a nice diversity. Or we saw there the first works by Sylvester Mekuyu, who has done doing some ceramic work, and his works are a mix between these kind of ancient objects that have been excavated, but also look quite futuristic in their design and in their overall finish. So there's a really nice balance between the two there. So that's one to look out for, Sylvester, and several others as well within the Free State Collective. The other one whose work I found to be quite fascinating was Spato Zanti. Spato Mzanti. There we go. We can look at some of his work, and again, what you'll find there is. There is again a deep engagement with the artist, right? The artist's subjectivity, but how that is mixed into the environment. So that's what I found to be so interesting. So there's really beautiful and at times kind of airy landscapes, like this one with the beehives. I mean, it's quite ominous with the bees. Kind of being there, but also the landscapes. I think the landscapes and some of the self portraits that are then put into that landscape, that kind of one's identity being linked to notions of land and issues of land, and these are obviously quite sensitive topics, especially within our political environment, with the whole land debate taking place. But I really admired how the artist really cunningly shifts between those issues of the land and obviously their own subjectivity. So that's one to look out for. Then as well, if we could move on from the project spaces and look at the auctions, which is also an important part of the art ecosystem. So at this year's RMB Turbine Art Fair, we have a Strauss & Co. auction, where they featured two artists. But before I get to the artists specifically, I think the auction space is really important as a kind of a secondary market. And again, yesterday, I think that the chairperson of Strauss & Co. did a fantastic job of kind of explaining their role within the broader kind of art value chain. But when one considers that, for example, there are artists who maybe in the 1950s and 60s and 70s were not appreciated or were forgotten. The secondary market, the auction market, is a really fantastic platform to bring those artists back to the fore, to kind of give them the historical the historical importance that they deserve. It's just the same thing is going to happen 20 or 30 years from now. As I said, if we consider the fact that there have been many artists that have been excluded from the Turbine or many other art fairs or even many other gallery spaces and so on. Maybe one day these artists might resurface through the auction market. So the auction market, over and above kind of ensuring that the the works that accrue value over time are brought back and obviously sold and resold and so on. I think it also does an important job of really digging up those forgotten histories. And so one of the artists that they featured this year is Gladys Mgudangu, uh, who is one of the most important Black female artists of the 20th century. She was a trained teacher, actually, worked as a nurse initially, but then worked as a teacher, and then for most of her adult life. I mean, she only started painting when she was in her 40s, for example, like really started her art career. So that also shows that it's never too late. But from her 40s, that's when she really started making art, and went on to carve out a really important career before her passing. And she passed on when she was still quite youngish, I mean, in her 60s, in her early 60s. But here are some of her works that have been placed alongside another important female artist, Maggie Lopsha, and I'll talk about her in a moment. But when you look at Glandu's work, there's actually been recently a revival of her aesthetic. Kimang wa Lehulere, for example, in 2017, did a whole body of work that was inspired by Glandu's work. So you can see how these kind of prominent contemporary artists are kind of looking back to these almost forgotten pioneers, and definitely Gladys was one of those pioneers. And as I said, her work has been put alongside Maggie Lopsha, and I think this was quite fascinating of a decision from Strauss and Co. to put these two artists who come from very different backgrounds. So Maggie Lopsha was born. Actually, a generation before Gladys, so she was much older than Gladys. But she is without doubt one of the most important and iconic artists in the country, especially because of the manner in which she promoted and kind of developed expressionism within the country. So again, I think that is worth looking at. Her work is worth revisiting, and perhaps looking at the impact that Gladys and your likes of Maggie Lopsha have had on a new breed of artists who work in a similar way. And I think what would be quite fascinating is to have a look at the works or the paintings by Gugandru and by Lopsha, and kind of juxtapose those with some of the paintings that are emerging from the First Look exhibition, for example, right, from the graduate shows, and one kind of sees this kind of continuation or this there's kind of a lineage tracing that you can do between the artists. And this is the value, this is really the value of the auction spaces, that because they engage with kind of more historical work, they really go back and they catalog, they image these past works, some of them which have not been seen. They try and trace patrons of these artists, and so the auction market is actually quite helpful in that. And I would urge those of you that are interested in kind of historical South African art to go to the website of your Strauss and Co. or your Aspire. These are kind of the major auction houses, and look at their catalogs, and you'll find, going back to whenever they've started digitizing their catalogs, and you'll find that they've actually done a fantastic job of cataloging South African art. So that's worth having a look at, and for those with deep enough pockets, perhaps could even consider purchasing a work or two from these luminaries who have really contributed to South African art. So we can then move on from this, and then the other space that I would like us to look at is the project space. So if we can go back to projects, um, have a look at the project space. Just wait for that to load. Okay, so just okay, so sorry about that. There was just a little bit of background noise, so I just had to wait for a second. Okay, so in the project space, I really am fascinated by these works coming out of Pretoria. Of course, as a kind of a native of Pretoria, there's some exciting work that is always taking place there. And Pretoria has always had this uneasy relationship with its kind of bigger and brother and more illustrious brother within the art scene, Johannesburg. But I think that there's this fascinating work that is coming out of there, and with risk of kind of blowing the horn of someone that comes from my own institution, the work being done by Carl Mash, as she calls herself, is really worth looking at. Because she really interrogates once again her own subjectivity, her own being, but juxtaposes that or really bounces that off with her relationship to the cow, like a cow, the animal. And I think that relationship between man and animal is an important one. I mean, if you go back to the beginning, our development as kind of human society and civilization could not have been the way that it has been without the beast of the fields, either as our companion, as dogs, or as horses that were really important, or as animals that we eat, like your chickens and your cows. So her work really looks at that kind of interface, the our relationship and that intersection between man and animal, and looking at it through a variety of mediums as well. Primarily, she is a sculptor. Carl Mash is a sculptor, but also has some really interesting engagements with other processes, such as like using the cowhide and kind of drawing on that, using aspects of using wool, and bringing that into her creativity as well, or her art making process. I think that becomes an important process within her own art making. So definitely the work by Carl Mash is worth looking at within the kind of the Kralia Picture, as she puts it. And if you think of Pretoria and the notion of a kraal, or kind of the center, the capital city, is also an amazing space of creativity. I know there are debates happening right now, for those of you that are into the music scene, with regards to Amapiano and where did they genesis from. And so there's this push and pull between spaces like Durban, with that Gom, and Pretoria, obviously, with the Amapiano, saying that this is something that is native to that space. So there's really some exciting work within the project spaces as well. Now, the other space that I would like to look at is the Tom Arts Gallery, which is situated within a shopping center, and I always find that quite interesting. So if we go back to the gallery spaces, and we look at Tom Arts, so I'm a big admirer of galleries that try as much as possible to break the mold and to go to and I say this with a lot of care, but to go to the people. And I mean that in the broadest sense of the word. It's not to say that people that come to galleries, we should not see them as people, but I think that they're a different kind of group. So I think when galleries are situated within a mall space, we do have other examples around the country of maybe smaller galleries as well. Some of them are kind of just storefronts, but I think these play a massive role in getting audiences that would otherwise not walk into your kind of traditional gallery space to also experience contemporary art. So to that end, I would really like to give a shout out to Tom Arts Gallery, which is situated at Morningside Shopping Center. And just to have a look at some of their work and what it is that they're presenting, we can actually look at their artists there. And as I say, I think what it does is it gives the ordinary individual who would perhaps just be going to the mall for Sunday shopping or for some Saturday day out with friends and so on. It actually gives them an opportunity to look at some really amazing work and to contemplate, as we are seeing here with Nela's work, which engages with again his own background, his own kind of subjectivity and where he comes from, issues around kind of initiation, going to school. But of course, the manner in which these images have been made is an opportunity for one to stop and to kind of contemplate. And as we kind of just scrolling through some of his art here, through Mandis's art, I think this will be an opportune time to talk about the image and the role that it plays within contemporary society. Of course, we know that we are bombarded with hundreds, if not thousands, of images on a daily basis, and so it becomes a process of selection and elimination on which images are we going to look at, or which images are we going to stare at for long enough that we can actually think about what is being pictured or what is before us. And I think that is something that we don't do often enough. That because there's just such a massive proliferation of images, we actually do not give ourselves enough time to just stop and think what we are looking at, think about what we are looking at. And again, this just speaks to the importance of a mall. I mean, if you think of a mall, there's a rush. People are trying to get into the shops and so on. People have packages. They've got plastics, but having a gallery within such a space gives us just a momentary opportunity to pause and reflect on what we are seeing, and also to pause and reflect on life generally. I think that is quite significant. And so, as I said, the final shout out to Thomas Gallery and any other gallery space that is within the mall. And I think that's just an encouragement again for us when we go to the malls, that just give 10 or 30 minutes to walk into the gallery space and look at some of the art there. And what one will often find is some of the artworks that are in those mall spaces are quite affordable. One can actually purchase those. So that's that. Once again, I would really encourage any questions for those that might have questions or comments, which you can post on the chat. Then we've got about 15 minutes remaining, and then we can use that time to also converse. I would like us to go back to our galleries now, just to go back to our galleries and perhaps just have a look at what some of the kind of bigger galleries are presenting. And here I would like us to look at the Goodman Gallery. which in many ways represents the top kind of most cutting edge art or artists in the country. And what is quite interesting when you think of the history of Goodman is when it started as well, it started as a small kind of storefront gallery, right? I mean, it didn't start off as this kind of large mega institution. It also actually started off as a gallery that was in a shopping center kind of scenario back in the 60s. So again, one must not underestimate the importance of those galleries and how they can develop into these kind of mega establishments as we are seeing in with Goodman. And then just to have a look at some of the work that might be within the Goodman. Just go to the viewing room. Okay, thank you. You can just scroll down. Okay, so what we have here is we have some of the most exciting photography by artists like Jabulani Dlamini, and of course your usual suspects, David Kolwane, Sentlenge, and so on. But for now, I just want to talk about photography as a kind of an art form, and this kind of goes back to the notion of imagery. So if you look at Jabulani Dlamini's work, if we can go up to Jabulani Dlamini's work, please. So Jabulani Dlamini comes from the Vaal area, and he has actually been a very important artist or photographer. He's a very important photographer in him kind of cataloging the stories and the histories of the ordinary folks. And one of his first kind of mega projects was him doing a kind of documentary photo collection or photo narrative of people that were affected by the Sharpeville incident from the 1960s, right? So we know the Sharpeville massacre that took place and really kind of shook the country. So what he did was he did this kind of very sensitive tracing of people that actually lived through, or descendants of people that lived through the Sharpeville incident. But he has really continued in that vein, right, of going and speaking about the everyday. And in many ways, his work is similar to the work of David Goldblatt, another kind of really important documentary photographer, was oddly enough also represented by the Goodman Gallery. But I think in this age where the image is all around us, and I mean the ability to take a photo is with us. We've got our cell phones where we can image ourselves and image our surroundings. I think the work of Jabulani Dlamini just reminds us that actually a photograph is more than a photograph. That we often just take it for granted because we take photographs all the time. We actually take it for granted the power and the value of a photograph. So I think his work is really worth looking at, in that sense of the often the stories that we overlook, or the histories that we ignore. Those are worth going back to and really thinking about and interrogating and in certain instances even researching. So even if it's our own personal histories, I think there's a value in one researching their own personal history and the photo archive that exists within your own kind of home space, and the kind of photos that we also take on a daily basis. What kind of album are we curating for the future through spaces like Instagram or Facebook or wherever it is that we keep our photographs. And this is the importance of photographers. I know there's been quite a lot of questions around what is the value of photography as kind of an artwork or a photograph getting that elevated importance to the same level as a kind of a painting or a sculpture. And this is a quite a deep debate that has been happening since kind of the history of the photograph itself. But I think it certainly does have a lot of cultural and heritage value when we are able to look at histories in different ways or in unusual ways, as we are seeing in the work of Jabulani Dlamini. So again, we can go back to some of the other artists that are part of the Goodman, your Sam Plengetwas, your William Kentridge. I'm not going to speak too much about Kentridge. All I can say is if you go to the video of the opening, there's a really nice explanation around the project that he did with the Artist Proof Studio and the kind of aims and objectives that they have there to kind of support artists. I think that is quite important. And so David Kolwane, I think, is another really amazing artist. Again, in terms of the history of South African art, and especially the history of art being produced by Black artists, specifically based in Johannesburg, and the kind of work that he has done as a curator, as an entrepreneur, as a teacher at the Back Factory. Really, his creative legacy is almost unparalleled. There have been quite a number of shows that happened recently that paid homage to his career, and I do know that there's an upcoming publication that is being coordinated or edited by Tembikosi Goniwe. So that's something to kind of look out for as well. Just cataloging the history of David Kolwane. So I'm just going to go back to some of the questions, and there's this one by Darwin. And sure, it's quite a good question, and it says, why do you say photography is something within us all? Surely having a massive following online and a fancy lens doesn't make you a photographer. Excellent question, and certainly I think when one starts to think of photography as kind of a serious artistic vocation, and photography as kind of something that one does every day at home, like photography for the masses, there are definitely clear distinctions there. And I do know that this is one of the issues that some of my colleagues within the photography department at my institution always have to grapple with. What really separates ordinary photographers from your kind of professional trained or the one that creates kind of serious art photographer. My reconciliation of this debate, and because one does not really want to take sides, I think there's equal value in the serious photography as a kind of an artistic vocation, but there's also value in the everyday photography as kind of an opportunity for each and every person to catalog their own histories. So as I say, my reconciliation of this is to say that the image is a space of contemplation. So if I'm able to contemplate through an artwork that has been created or through a photograph that was taken by David Goldblatt or Santu Mofokeng or Cedric Nunn or any of the important photographers, if I'm able to contemplate deeply about existence or whatever it is that they are imaging, and I'm able to get a similar kind of contemplation from a photograph that maybe was posted on Facebook or Instagram by someone who's not a professional photographer. I think there's equal value in those forms of contemplation, and I think that for me the important part is that pause is, do the images that we see on a daily basis give us that opportunity to think deeply. And I think for the most part, the problem is that the kind of mass photograph and the everyday kind of Twitter, Instagram, Facebook very rarely gives us an opportunity to really think, because there's so much of that material that has been bombarded to us. Whereas I think the more kind of gallery space, serious photography gives us that momentary pause that we need. So again, there is no right or wrong here, whether this form of photography is more important or better than the other. But I think for us viewers, it's just a matter of giving ourselves time to really think through some of the images that we are looking at on a daily basis. And I thank you, Calvin, for kind of your response as well. For adding to this. But again, I'm very sensitive to privilege one form of creativity over the other. I think the most important part is that we, in whatever we do, whatever image making tradition exists, that it gives us really an opportunity to reflect on our existence. And really, these are going to be my closing remarks in this walkabout. And as I said, it's really just a highly subjective walkabout. You guys are welcome to go into all the different exhibitions that are there, and there are multiple exhibitions with really exciting and amazing work. But my closing remarks really would be that the creative economy or the creative industries, over and above the entertainment value that they give us. Earlier I talked about the whole thing of aesthetic masturbation, right? That an artwork needs to give you pleasure. So I get that from an intellectual and an aesthetic standpoint. But over and above that, I think their actual value to society and to humanity is they really give us an occasion or an opportunity to really think deeply around our existence and the meaning of our existence. I mean, notions of where we come from and why we are here are very difficult ones to answer. And it's actually quite interesting that if you just go on to Google, for example, and ask which are the most Googled questions with the word who, right? Which are the most Googled questions with the word who? What comes up is who do I look like? Who am I? And who are you? These are the most Googled questions with the word who. And so as human beings, there's this sense where we really want to engage with the meaning of our existence. And this is what art gives us an opportunity to do, to really grapple with these big questions, which are often very difficult and very divisive, and the religious sects will be pitted against each other and so on. But I think art is a neutral space where we can interrogate all of these issues. So to everyone, really enjoyed this year's online Turbine RMB and Turbine Art Fair. Hopefully, some of you will also purchase some artworks, especially from the emerging artists as well, from like your first look and so on. And it was a pleasure to be with you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.